Okay, we'll talk about ELAB. Um, Luckily, this is the first or second high day clear out I've shorted this year. I've actually completely avoided high day clearouts in probably I would say late November through all of December and into early January. When the market was strong, I said in a lot of videos that high day clearouts are not good patterns in strong markets, and I always said they are good patterns in weak markets, right? And we saw this with SPEC, and this chart's a lot like SPEC, where we had an initial parabolic and then a secondary swipe, um, and then a pull, right? So, Heidi Clearout, yeah, I saw this pop in the pre-market, and of course we got our quick pullback, right? Here's your quick pullback from high day. Um, we've seen that be bullish. It's a bullish factor, right? Um, I'm really waiting. VWAP was something like here, like this. So I was really waiting for a VWAP rotation, and then I was gonna look at the structure, look at the book, and try to make a play, right? So um, we'll go over the book right here. This was really interesting. We'll talk a lot about waiting, um, waiting for the right structure to come into play and waiting to see what the book tells us, right? Because the book tells us a lot. It was very similar to SPC um, on the high day squeeze right here, up in the high day. And yeah, if it wasn't a weaker market, because I don't know if you remember, but starting a week and a half ago, this was at the January 4th, January 5th, we started getting these big gappers that we started getting really big gappers that would open and it would look really strong, like they'd be doing a walk down into the open. And usually, what happens if stocks get walked down into the open, they usually make some type of push. But what we were seeing January 4th and 5th on a couple different names is we started just seeing dumps, right? Not only just dumps, but usually in a strong market, you might get a dump and then there's some like manipulated VWAP stuff, and then it rotates, right? And maybe it breaks high day, and or maybe it long traps, and something like that. But in January, we started seeing a lot of dumps, minimal bounces, and more dumps. And then like painted backside, that would go up a little bit, and then more dumps. Like we're just seeing tons and tons of weakness. Um, so, I always say you always make the most money when you go from a really, really strong market to a weaker market because things will still gap up. You'll get, this thing was gapped up 120% or something, um, but you'll get fades. And then when the market really starts getting weaker, you'll start to see pre market fades, you'll start to see market open fades, you'll start to see stuff like that. And I always talk about, counting the number of structures, right? So here's your initial squeeze, this is the first structure, and when markets get weaker, um, the number of times it will break high day tends to decrease, and not only that, a lot of times they just tend to swipe high day and dump. So that's why high day clearouts have potential to be, um, great shorts in a weaker market, right? So, you know, just like how we had a quick dump right here, and I'm like, oh man, all these shorts are going to be stuck under 380, which is where this lower high level was. And by the way, I was already up 20% here. I'm like, let me de-risk a little bit and let me see what happens at market open because I thought this might be we might get some rigged push. And I told this to my Discord room above 3.8, right? Because we could see that is where all the shorts have their averages, right? Unless you were able to read the high declare, or if you shorted this with wide risk, right? But a lot of people chase. Um, and if a stock has volume at market open, then it doesn't mean it's going to squeeze a high day, but I'm at least looking at this initial liquidity level. And in weaker markets, you can just look at what the key level is, because a lot of times in a weaker market, it might just swipe that one level and then pull, right? Because there's just not enough liquidity to do some type of, crazy squeeze, right? So, big thing about this. This was a biotech stock, and I always talk about how biotech stocks can be very, scary because you don't know if especially on the more legitimate companies. They can have infinite bid support. They can make multiple squeezes. Um, they're very event driven, so if there's a legitimate catalyst, it can really go really high. But at the same time, there are low flow biotech stocks that give big fades like this, and I think some rules of thumb in terms of trying to determine when you're trying to decipher a PR, and this is what I told my Discord room. I was like, well, first of all, anything that has under 5 million float already has an extremely high chance of just having a BSPR, right? Sometimes you get, very rarely, you'll get like an SLNO situation where the float might be smaller, but they actually have legitimate news, and a biotech fund comes in and starts buying up large portions of the company and stuff like that. But overall, uh, tiny float stocks, under 5 million float, especially under like 3 million float, is already a red flag in terms of is the PR red flag in terms of um, if you're a long, if you like to go long, right? So um, it's highly likely it's going to be just a pump and dump PR, right? So small float is a small float for a reason. Um, but also this PR was like, oh, we have a licensing agreement, which um, does have potential. We've seen licensing agreements be very bullish, but these are usually on you know thicker flow companies, say 30 million flow companies that have institutional support, and and a lot of times the legitimate PRs will say, hey, we have a licensing agreement with some large company. It could be Pfizer, could be Gilead, could be um, AbbVie, could be Merck, could be one of the multi-billion-dollar biotech companies. But this was with some like relatively small company was a licensing agreement. So, um, but the big red flag in terms of is this like a good PR or bad, is they didn't put any information about how much money they were going to receive. Right? Usually, the very bullish biotech PRs will say things like, and we saw this, over the last 2 or 3 months, where it'll say things like, um, we're getting $50 million up front, and we're getting another possible 300 million in milestone payments, right? So big dollar value is important, but what low floats will do is they'll write a PR that looks, interesting, uses all the same terminology, but they'll just leave this out. They'll just leave out the fact that we're not even going to tell you how much this licensing agreement's worth, you know, um, if it's even meaningful for the company, and that type of thing. So, just the fact that they put no dollar figures into PR and the fact that it was a low flow stock made me think, you know what, this is probably just some low flow pump. It's a weaker market. Look for some pre-market shorts. I did the extremely smart thing of covering before another 40% fee. I thought so. So this did the thing that I talked about on God. What were this? We did this. MLGO did this last year, where you get increasing selling volume at the bottom, which is very weird. Because I said in those videos, I was like, in order to get big red candles like this, usually what has to happen, it needs to consolidate, especially if it's midday. It needs to consolidate for like 1 to 3 or 4 hours. It could be at least one. A lot of times it's much more, and then it cracks. And when it cracks, you get a big red volume candle, right? But if I think it's just going relentlessly down, and the volume is starting to increase, we can see the dump candles here. It's usually a sign that somebody on the inside is either dumping insider shares, or they're diluting, or just somebody's bagged and is just dumping a huge position. Um, so when I saw this, I actually said in my room, I'm like, oh man, this might break the low of the previous day, or it might break the close of the previous day, right? The close was like 1.6s, and yeah, we got it. Yeah, look at this. So it actually, some person was just dumping, and a lot of times I didn't want to chase, but believe it or not, you could have chased straight into the 2.2s and caught it to the 1.5s, and actually would have been like kind of an insane trade. But the 5 minute 200 was around here. I I saw how down only this was, and I'm like, surely this is going to bounce and give some type of backside move, and maybe I get one more trade, maybe up here, and then it goes to the 5 minute 200, and then I can cover, right? So it's like, but I'm like, man, I'm up 40%. It's down so much. Um, Let me just cover it all here, then maybe add a little more on a bounce, and then yeah. Long story short, it went straight down. So yeah, so that was my chart. We'll go over the the book and all that stuff. So yeah, here's the Thinkorswim chart. Let's do this. So big pop, and the first thing I'm noticing is volume is pretty decent. It's like 100, 100, 200, 100. So I always talk about how like consistent volume like this can be pretty bullish. It usually shows a sign of accumulation. They're buying stocks, right? And also we got a quick dump from high day, right? Here's high day, and here's this like down only um, 30% move, right? And I always talk about these quick dumps create a lot of empty space to the upside. So, and I saw how consistent this volume was. I'm like, you know what? Let me wait for some type of VWAP rotation, right? And then the question is, do you short this high volume rotation under high a day, or do you wait for some type of clear out and some type of pattern later? And the way I was looking at this play, every chart's going to be different, so it's always hard to kind of um, teach like one hard and fast rule um, of what you should do. But I think a big kind of red flag on these pushes is um, is the bid support, right? So I did see the bid support under VWAP here, and we got a push, right? And there was a big ask up here with minimal bid support to the downside. So I can see why people who are using Bookmap on this might think, okay, this is just like a little long trappy VWAP squeeze, and then they're going to pull it, right? But what I was looking at to the left was I was looking that they put this like 20,000 share ask at $4, and then they're pushing it down, and here's all that empty space, right? So I thought to myself, and also high day was in the 4.3s, so a couple thoughts going through my head was, well, if I short down here, my average would probably be near 3.8, and high days all the way up at 4.3. So it's like I don't like having my average really far away from high day. So that's one thing that was kind of keeping me away from this. And the other thing that's keeping me away from this is I thought that this $4 ask um, was put here to push the stock down, and then they would rotate it back above $4. So it's like, maybe um, I'll be patient and wait for the $4 push and then look and see what the book looks like, right? Um, so even though this didn't have bid support down here, I just thought of being above $4 was a better play, and then maybe I'll make a play right away. But it kind of depends on the book. But what I actually saw was on the push, so they took out this ask and started pushing it. And on this push, I saw them started throwing up a lot. There's a lot of bids started coming in, right? So there were bids here and bids here, and I was thinking to myself, I told my Discord room, I was like, I really don't like the bid follow up, right? Like, yeah, it swiped this $4 level, which is pretty interesting, but I didn't like how there were stacks and stacks of bids, and I just learned that, and I think we saw this on the SPC, that a lot of times when in low float land, when they want to squeeze a key liquidity level, a lot of times they'll throw up the bids that come in later, and then once they push it up to that level, they start pulling the bids, right? So I saw these bids come in, and I commented my desk. I'm like, man, there's a lot of bid follow up. I really don't like it. And then they push through high a day, but I remember I'm like, hey, this is weak market conditions, high day clearouts. Like SPC was working, like, well, let me try to make a bookmap read right as it breaks high day. And one thing I noticed was they pulled this bid down here. It actually moved it upwards, but the main thing I really super liked was the new ask showing up. I always love if I think it's going to be possible, high day clear out and pull. I definitely want to see new ask form on the right, see new ask to the right, and you have to kind of react in real time because if you're shorting this, you have to react like here. Like this is where like you're kind of reacting. Like you kind of see it for because you don't know it's going to be this long line. Maybe you could try getting in here, right? Maybe you're a little slow and you get in the high 4.10s or low 4.2s. But I saw this come in. I saw it stack right away, and then I saw these, and I just went in right away. I was like, you know what? I was able to do that because I noticed a change in the market conditions. So going into this push, I was like, high declare up potential, high declare up potential, high declare up potential, right? In order to like react that fast to new information coming in, you have to be prepared for that pattern, right? And I'll miss, a lot of times I'll miss shorts because I'm not mentally prepared for the pattern. So we get a big dump. It was amazing. And then, but I noticed all this empty space to the upside. I'm like, and then I noticed there's one ask at 3.8, and I'm like, um, and I actually saw them throwing up bids here, so I thought they might rotate this back towards 4.10s and then do something, but they ended up pulling these bids, and this 3.8 level held, and that's why if we go back to the chart here, I was like, you know what, guys, there is a lot of empty space. So you always want to think what the bullish thesis is, right? And even if it's not a bullish thesis, it's more of like if you miss this trade up here, right? What level would need to get broken for you to short maybe some type of secondary pattern? Because what's nice about in a weaker market, you might get a secondary pattern near market open or near 9:45, 10, 10:15 that you could get in on and still make money, right? So of course, market open volume, it starts trading 700K right away. So I'm already thinking, okay, this already has really good volume, and you could see how controlled the walk down is here, right? And I'm like, all right, 3.8 is like the rotation level, right? So we get a push, and of course, a common market maker trick is to make a VWAP look like it's really, 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 really strong, and then rotate the VWAP shorts, right? My recommendation to a lot of people, by the way, don't short under VWAP or don't short at VWAP. Like in most contexts, it's not a good idea. There are times where it makes sense. Um, but overall, you're gonna have a lot more success waiting for the early retail VWAP shorts to get squeezed to some. In a weaker market, the squeeze might not be that big. In a stronger market, it might be really, really, really big. In December, and we saw VWAP traps squeeze high today. On these types of charts. So it's in a weaker market, you can have kind of bad habits, but it's okay because there's so much continuation to the downside that yeah, you might take a loss down here, but then you make it back and you think, okay, that was nice, like that type of thing. But in a strong market, if you're shorting under VWAP, you could take a 20% loss, take another short, take another 20% loss, right? Like strong markets really punish bad habits, right? So um, my personal recommendation, especially given how much empty space is up here, that's a bullish factor. The market open volume, that's a bullish factor. Again, that doesn't mean it's going to squeeze high day, but I'm at least looking at this liquidity level. Um, and then just, it's very easy. You could just create an alert and send an alert at 3.8 and that type of thing. But yeah, and then we'll go back to the book here. I actually thought this was building up for a much, much, much bigger move. But this is like, because I wanted to re-add my covers like above $4, but look what happened on the book here, right? Here's your 3.8 clear out, and then it did a secondary clear out. But then after the secondary clear out, we got like 6 layers of 30, 20, 30K asking absolutely stacked. And a lot of people in my room actually shorted this down here in this consolidation and this consolidation. And it ended up being the right play, man. Like, look how extreme that book is. Just like, look how many shares are just stacked on the ask here. But there were bids stacked too. So I was like, it's kind of like a battle of who's going to win. But A, weaker market conditions. B, this already did a squeeze here, so the odds of further high day squeezes are less likely. And C, we have a bid prop, right? We have a clear lower trend line that's getting broken. The only kind of scary part was when it re-rotated right here, but this rotation just hit all of these asks, right? You could see how many million asks were stacked, and then the rest is history. It went straight down. I did not think some insider was selling down to 1.4, but um, so my 40, well, after my other covers, ended up being like a 30% trade. Um, but this thing ended up fading like 60, 70% from my average. So I guess I kind of piked it. Um, but yeah, this was a really, really interesting one. A lot of these big lessons are like, if it's understanding these quick dumps, understanding the key liquidity levels, right? And yeah, and understand just like weaker market, high clearouts work, and a lot of times they only have enough liquidity to go for the, one of the main levels, and then you're just a lot of times you're just using the structure, whether it's high or lows. This is bearish in low float stocks. The market conditions are bearish. The fact that this key liquidity level keeps getting rejected is bearish. And then on the book, it's all those asks. So massive fade. And yeah, ELAB, crazy stock. I like it. I'm liking this pre-market and market open weakness. Hopefully, you have a really good month with it. Hopefully, we still get range, and hopefully, we still get big fades. So, um, yeah, that's it for today. ELAB. You guys have a good one. See ya.